for him, and you're taking him over these solid wide receiver twos. So I don't think Chase Edmonds is going to be someone I have much on my teams this year.
I got one follow-up question, Balky, if we have time.
Go ahead, Farrell. Yes, please.
What do you consider yourself to be a better drafter or a better game manager, better lineup manager?
Aren't they similar?
Where did these great wins come from last year?
I wouldn't say I'm a better drafter than others. I feel like maybe in the way I draft, like I'm not one to draft like 6 running backs in the first 6 rounds. I'm not one of those drafters, but I try to have a balanced team and put myself in position, to where I have, strengths all around my roster, not just one, not just like strong at running back and wide receiver, but I try to have a balanced roster. So I don't really do anything too crazy in drafts. But hopefully that sort of answered the question a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And so for you, Derek, too, like when you're going hard on all these football guys' drafts this year, how concerned are you about the waiver wire and making sure all these teams are up to snuff? Certainly, I don't want to say the waiver wire is going to be easier this year with COVID maybe not being as big of a factor. But when you consider drafting all these teams, how concerned are you about keeping up on the waiver wire and making sure that you're formulating and putting forth the best possible starting lineups you can on a week-to-week basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be tough. I know some guys hire people to do their waiver wires and all that stuff, but I actually really enjoy it. I love redraft. I like best ball, but to be honest, once I draft those teams, I don't look at them until maybe the last week of the season. Whereas redraft, I really enjoy sort of the strategy and figuring out, how much your opponent's going to bid on a guy on the waiver wire, and sort of trying to figure out whether you should go heavy early with Fab, or maybe, keep some if you're, going to make the playoffs. I think this year, waivers are Wednesday and not Sunday, I think. So, last year was the first big year I had where I think I was managing like 15 teams, and it definitely was a challenge, but, I just devote, one night each week and focus on that and put in my bids, and then I'm done. I'm looking forward to it.
I'll say, and Derek, it's interesting too, because I look forward to waivers too. I think it gets a bad rap, right? We all love drafting. Yeah. Drafting is so much fun, but then the managing of the lineups, the managing of waivers gets to be a little tiresome after a while. But I'll tell you what, and that's the attitude I've had for most of the last 10 years. But the last few years, man, I love waking up on Thursday mornings to see who I got, right? To see who I got on the waiver wire, because it's sort of like not a second draft. I mean, that's ridiculous. But just to see how I did on the bids, see how the bids turned out. I think that's as much fun. Thursday mornings, very, very fun part of my week. And Friday nights, always a very fun part of my week, especially when we get to talk to great guests like Derek Kappes. You follow him on Twitter, @Derek Kappes. Derek, can't thank you enough for coming on, carving out a little bit of time on your Friday night to hop aboard and talk a little shop with us. Good luck in all your leagues, and we'll see you out in Planning Hollywood in a couple of months, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'll see you in Vegas.
Thank you, Derek.
Absolutely. Derek Kappes, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, absolutely. You do the same. So good to have a former multi-league champ in the FFPC and the Football Guys Players Championship come aboard tonight. Good stuff from Derek Kappes, and I not that I envy him, Farrell, but man, the first year you really go full out, go all in drafting a ton of teams. That is such a fun year, and obviously if it turns out bad, it turns out bad. But man, doing all those drafts and getting ready for the season and having all those teams out there and following them throughout the season. My first year I did that. It was awesome. I loved it.
It is, and it's a big step, and it's a step that if it can be managed from a time standpoint and then be repeated from a success standpoint, he'll enjoy it year in, year out. I got the vibe from him, Balky, that just basically this stuff is not that complicated, and I enjoy doing it. And he seems to enjoy every aspect of it. He's not afraid to say when he doesn't know a player or doesn't can't figure a player out. He understands the players as what they mean to him in the construction of his team. And I like that, and obviously it's paying dividends for him.
I want to just, before we get to a couple of emails here, before we close up shop for the week, Farrell, he said his bust, or not as necessarily a bust, but a guy he was staying away from was Chase Edmonds. And I know a lot of people early on were drafting him. And then even after, it didn't look like they were going to add anybody, people were still drafting Chase Edmonds high. Now, he slipped to the 6th round based on the James Conner signing. How do you fall in on this? Does Edmonds represent a good buy for you in the 6th round, or are you more likely to take Conner, in the 10th round? And I apologize, I cannot remember if I asked you this before or not, but I'm going to ask you again, because if you answered it, I forgot what you said.
Yeah. No, you haven't asked it before, but in the area of the 6th round, he gets no attention from me because I like the receivers. More importantly, I like the running backs that are in that area, and I don't feel comfortable and consistently understand what they're going to do in Arizona, and I struggle. I've got to look in because I really want to figure out Rondale Moore and what that means to me. And I don't think a lot of other players have figured that out either, because you can tell me what the Mojo says about him, but I don't think he's moved much either. But so that's a situational no for me. I don't believe that I want to invest that draft capital in Chase Edmonds in the 6th round.
Actually, Rondale Moore is going to be right in between a couple of receivers we touched on tonight. Rondale Moore, wide receiver 54 at the 1209 in Football Guys draft. That is right after Rashad Bateman and Darnell Mooney, who we all know Derek Kappes is a fan of. And it is right ahead of T.Y. Hilton and Henry Ruggs, another guy that Derek was completing his Raider stacks with, the Ruggs John Brown duo in best ball drafts. We'll see how that turns out for him. But that is where Rondale Moore is going in drafts right now. Let's shift our focus over to our listener emails, and we're going to kick things off with Art in Savannah, Georgia. He writes, how concerning is it that Antonio Gibson is still rehabbing a toe injury that happened almost half a calendar year ago, considering where he's going in FPC drafts? Thank you, gentlemen. That is Art, Savannah, Georgia. Art, we appreciate the email. We thank you. And I'll tell you right now, Antonio Gibson, as he's talking about, running back 14, Farrell, at the 209. That is right behind Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones. It's right ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and J.K. Dobbins. You feel good about that spot for Antonio Gibson at the 209? Me personally, I think I could be on board with that. I think the toe is a little bit concerning, but you're talking about a rocked-up, thick, three-down back that's got a lot of pass-catching experience. Yeah, I'm going to take a chance on him at the 209.
Sure, and when people reach for him, it doesn't surprise me. I see him go off much earlier in the 2nd round sometime. But, Art has a very good point. There's nothing that can ruin a player's season quicker than a bad toe. Turf toe, ligaments, whatever it is, the toe is one of the greatest areas of frustration because there's no real and quick way to heal it. You can ice it, you can shoot it, you can do whatever you want, but it's still going to linger. It's still going to hurt. We watched Patrick Mahomes and what happened with Super Bowl this year, and that should be an indication that of what a toe can do to a player.
A minuscule appendage, yet it has a massive impact on a player, especially a running back. That depends on using that toe to cut and plant. So we're going to find out more as the season goes on, and if they're resting him more and he's not out there in training camp a lot, then yeah, certainly I think he's going to slip. Right now, knowing what I know, I can get on board with him at that spot. Moving on to Jim in Brainerd, Minnesota. How are you guys handling the Cowboys tight end situation when you consider Jarwin coming back from his injury and how Dalton Schultz performed in his place in 2020. Jim in Brainerd, Minnesota, we thank you for emailing in. I looked at this earlier before the show started, Farrell, and there is quite a bit of disparity here between these two tight ends. Blake Jarwin right now is going off the board in Football Guys drafts over the last 5 days, tight end 20 at the 12:03. Dalton Schultz going much, much later than that, actually. Tight end 36 at the 19.9. So he's basically one of those final pick flyer type players right now. That's a lot of disparity between Jarwin and Schultz. And I guess everybody's sort of assuming that Jarwin is going to be the guy. And when Prescott comes back, Jarwin's powers are going to be even more magnified. And if that's true, he's an awesome value in the 12th round. I guess I just worry about Schultz being out there and how much that's going to affect both these guys' end of season numbers.
We've got to see this in preseason because, on the previous broadcast, I said that I just don't see how they can regulate to the bench a tight end with the kind of hands that Schultz has, 60+ catches last year from those quarterbacks. And there's a lot of great pass catchers on this team, and a running back that I think is coming back in a serious way this year with Zeke Elliott. And then we just heard this week that Pollard, who when in college got much work in the slot position, is getting more work there early on in camp. So I just there's too much unknown for me to figure this out. And in the FFPC, I'm not waiting that late to figure tight end out. So, I may miss out on a golden opportunity, but this one's just not for me right now. I reserve the right to change my mind because I think I like both these players, but I really can't figure out what's going to happen with them. I'd like to get in touch with our man up in Brainerd to see what he thinks about the movie Fargo sometime, so you could send that to him. Because Brainerd was a big deal in that movie.
It was huge, for sure. And obviously, being a Midwestern boy, obviously, I was a fan as well, even though it's from a neighboring state. Dalton Schultz basically free. So I guess I'd take a chance on him in the 19th round. Who cares? As a third tight end in Football Guys drafts, if I were drafting in that. Jarwin's a little bit more nebulous, right, as far as what to do with him, because in that area there means Zach Ertz is going there. If he gets traded, his ADP is going to go up because he's going to be traded to a team that wants to use him. Anthony Ferkser is going right around there. We saw him catching a ton of passes at minicamp, obviously, as well. Adam Troutman, I'm a fan of this year. And then don't forget about Hunter Henry, too. So I think all those guys make some sense there. And not to mention, Gerald Everett, Cole Kmet, Jared Cook. I mean, these are all guys going after Jarwin. So there's some good tight end goodness there in the 11th, 12th round for Football Guys drafts this year. If you want to get your third one there, or even a backup, if you draft a stud right away, I think you can find some players that you really want to be in business with. Final email tonight, Farrell. Nick in Southfield, Michigan. Dear Terry and Cordell, are you convinced that Big Ben and his reconstructed throwing elbow are going to be able to keep the Steelers playmakers elite in 2021? Appreciate it. That is Nick in Southfield, Michigan. Nick, thank you for the email. We appreciate it. So Big Ben had his elbow surgery reconstructed last year. We know he wasn't exactly the most accurate passer. Well, he's never been really the most accurate deep passer, but it was really bad last year, Farrell. Chase Claypool, I know you love. You also got Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster there. There's going to be a lot of weapons for Roethlisberger to throw to. Are you concerned about the elbow affecting that at all this season?
Yeah, and I don't know how to answer the question because until we see this guy play in a preseason game, we won't know. But I've never been engaged with quarterbacks to understand what's going on with the elbow, and I can't give you any meaningful insight on it. Roethlisberger's an older player. Older players have trouble recovering. It was difficult to, we were watching an undefeated team there for a while, Balky, and then the wheels came off. I refuse to believe that any of these receivers who put up numbers last year in such an impressive way are going to be thwarted too much by any physicality issues with Roethlisberger. He seems like a tough guy, and they know how to get open in tight spaces. I think it'll be fine.